The city breathes differently after midnight. Its familiar streets warp under the sickly orange glow of the streetlights. I was trying to get to my grandmother's house, but never with such a feeling of isolation. Finally, a bus appeared through the haze. It was an older model, nearly empty. A ghost ship sailing through the deserted urban landscape. Resigned and weary, I hailed it down. Stepping aboard felt like entering another world. There were only a handful of souls scattered throughout the long carriage. The driver was a stooped, elderly man whose eyes seemed to hold a permanent expression of exhaustion. I paid my fare and found a seat by a window. As I settled in for the journey, a strange sense of foreboding began to prickle. The journey to my grandmother's house had begun, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was heading somewhere else entirely. The cityscape faded into darker, sparse suburbs. This bleak route bordered the old psychiatric hospital. The fog thickened, pressing against the windows, reducing visibility. Inside the bus, the passengers seemed to shrink into themselves, their silence growing heavier. We were a motley collection of late-night travelers, united by our destination and the oppressive atmosphere. The rhythmic thump of the wheels was the only sound. As we passed the hospital's gates, the world seemed to hold its breath. The fog was thickest here, the air colder, the driver's knuckles were white on the wheel. Suddenly the bus slowed. A figure materialized from the fog, standing in the road. It was a woman signaling for us to stop, and a collective dread washed over the bus. The bus halted, its engine idling. A woman stood in the headlights, a stark vision against the swirling mist. She wore a thin hospital gown, her head completely bald, giving her a skeletal appearance. Her face captured our horror. She stood there, finger raised, a silent statue in the road. Silence descended. Passengers clutched each other, eyes wide. We were trapped, a tableau of rising panic. The fog pressed in. I fumbled for my phone, eyes darting back to the motionless woman. As she stepped toward the bus, the air grew thick. The driver's face, visible in the mirror, was pure terror. He gripped the wheel, a look of recognition and ancient fear. He knew exactly what stood outside. Just as the woman's foot was about to touch the first step, the driver acted. There was no warning, no shouted command. He slammed his foot on the accelerator with a sudden violent force that threw us all back in our seats. The engine roared to life, a guttural scream that tore through the night silence. The bus lurched forward, its tires screeching on the wet asphalt as it swerved around the still-standing figure. She was left behind in an instant, swallowed once more by the thick, rolling fog. The bus was now a projectile hurtling into the darkness at a reckless speed. A wave of confusion and nervous chatter rippled through the passengers. We exchanged bewildered glances, our fear momentarily replaced by puzzlement. Why had he done that? Leaving someone, anyone, stranded on this desolate road in the middle of the night seemed cruel, almost inhuman. I found my voice first, my words shaky as I called out, "Why didn't you let her on?" I asked, my question hanging in the tense air. The other passengers murmured in agreement, their faces a mixture of indignation and lingering fear. We needed an explanation for the driver's bizarre and aggressive action. The old man didn't turn around. His eyes remained locked on the rearview mirror, his face pale and slick with sweat under the dim cabin lights. When he finally spoke, his voice was a ragged, trembling whisper, almost lost beneath the roar of the engine. "That's no ordinary woman, miss." He managed to get out each word laced with an unmistakable dread. The simple statement held a weight that silenced us all. It wasn't an answer, but a warning. It confirmed the nameless terror we had all felt, giving it shape and form, and suggesting the truth was far worse than we could have imagined. He said nothing more after that, his jaw clenched tight, his focus entirely on driving as fast as the old bus could possibly go. The fare collector stood beside him, a sentry at his post, his own face a mask of grim determination. The atmosphere inside the bus shifted again, the confusion evaporating and leaving behind a much purer, more potent fear. We were no longer just on a late-night bus ride, we were fleeing from something. The driver knew what it was, and his terror was contagious, spreading through the small cabin like a plague, turning our unease into raw, primal panic. Instinctively, I followed the driver's terrified gaze to the rearview mirror. My own reflection stared back for a second, pale and wide-eyed, before my focus shifted to the scene behind us. My blood ran cold. The woman was not standing where we had left her. She was chasing us. But the way she moved was wrong, a grotesque parody of running that defied all logic. Her limbs flailed at odd, disjointed angles, and her body seemed to glide over the tarmac with impossible speed. She was keeping pace with the bus, a pale spectre gaining on us through the swirling fog, her hospital gown flapping wildly behind her like broken wings. The sight was so unnatural, so utterly nightmarish, that my mind struggled to process it. She wasn't just fast, she was impossibly swift, a blur of white against the encroaching darkness. The bus was already traveling at dangerous speed, swaying and rattling on the uneven road, yet she was closing the distance with terrifying ease. The two young women behind me started to whimper, their earlier bravado completely gone. The man in the back let out a choked gasp. Panic began to take hold, a frantic screaming thing clawing its way up my throat. We were being hunted. The fare collector's voice cut through the rising hysteria, sharp and urgent. "Faster! She's almost caught up!" The driver didn't need to be told. The engine was already screaming in protest, pushed far beyond its limits. The whole frame of the bus shuddered and groaned, threatening to tear itself apart. Every pothole and crack in the road felt like a violent explosion, a jarring impact that rattled our teeth and made the windows tremble in their frames. Yet it wasn't enough. The ghostly figure grew larger in the rear window, her features becoming clearer. All I could make out clearly was the blood. The pristine white gown I'd seen earlier was a lie, a trick of the fog and the headlights. As she drew closer, I could see dark, ugly stains splattered across the fabric, crimson patches that seemed to pulse in the dim light. Her frantic, impossible chase was a dance of death, a relentless pursuit by something that had no right to move so fast, to exist in our world. The fear was no longer a creeping dread, it was a physical presence, a crushing weight in my chest that made it hard to breathe, hard to think, hard to do anything but watch in horror as she closed in. I sat by the folding doors, staring out at the dark road, until she leapt, impossibly, from the shadows. Her ruined face slammed against the glass, inches from mine torn skin bruises. A grin stretched wide to reveal sharp, stained teeth. Her eyes were bottomless voids, inhuman and endless. I froze, unable to scream as the bus erupted in panic. Passengers shrieking, the driver swerving wildly. The thing outside just grinned, her gaze locked on me, promising horrors I couldn't imagine. Suddenly, the fare collector grabbed a heavy bag and smashed it against the door again and again. With a final blow, her grip broke. She tumbled away, hitting the road. Even as she fell, her eyes never left mine. She rose, standing in the headlights, her laughter echoing as we sped away. That face, grinning, broken, relentless, burned itself into my memory forever. The bus tore through the fog, everyone silent, fear thick in the air. The driver's haunted eyes kept flicking to the rearview mirror as if expecting the impossible. I forced myself to look. At first, only fog and taillights. Then a pale shape emerged in the mist, the woman running impossibly close. Each time the driver glanced at the mirror, he seemed to age, dread etched into his face. The passengers sat frozen, the fare collector gripping the rail, the young women sobbing quietly. We weren't just fleeing a woman. We were running from something unearthly, something that belonged to the night. The figure in the mirror drew closer, and hope felt further away with every mile. The road narrowed, streetlights vanished, and the bus became a tomb of flickering light and fear. A scraping hiss slid along the side of the bus. Was it a branch or something worse? The fare collector peered out, face draining of color, muttering in denial. Panic spread. Passengers whimpered, clutched hands, whispered prayers. Every shadow outside felt alive, every bump a threat. We were trapped, strangers bound by terror, hunted by something unseen. The bus felt smaller, the windows thinner as dread pressed in from all sides. For the first time, I truly understood what it meant to be hunted. Suddenly, she appeared closer than ever, sharp against the swirling fog. Her hospital gown streamed behind her as she ran, her movements jerky, inhuman. Her face pale, bruised, grinning impossibly wide eyes like black holes. I recoiled, breath fogging the glass, but she kept coming, gaining ground. The bus rocked as the driver swerved the fare collector, shouting, "Faster!" Her bare feet pounded the asphalt, fingers outstretched, hunger in her eyes. For a split second, her face filled my window, every wound, every line of that horrific smile. It felt like she could see through me into every secret and fear I'd ever had. She wasn't just chasing the bus, she was coming for us, for me. She launched herself at the bus, slamming into the window beside me, her face pressed against the glass, grinning, eyes huge and empty. Chaos erupted. Passengers screamed, scrambled away. The fare collector swung his bag in desperation. The driver floored the gas, swerving, tires screeching, but she clung on, laughing hideously. For a moment I thought she'd break through, her teeth bared, her grip unbreakable. My body went cold, paralyzed by terror. At last a final blow knocked her loose. She tumbled away, twisting unnaturally on the road. But she stood, dusted herself off and stared after us, her smile promising the nightmare wasn't over. Even as we sped away, her eyes followed, unblinking. The bus sped on, leaving her laughter behind, but the silence inside was suffocating. The fare collector slumped, his weapon useless, everyone pale and shaken. Shadows outside twisted into her shape. Every sound felt like her return. The bus, once a refuge, now felt like a cage haunted by memory. The passengers sat in stunned shock, bonded by terror, changed forever. The driver didn't slow until the first lights of town appeared. Each mile was an eternity, every turn a new wave of dread. Civilization's glow finally broke the spell, but we were not the same. The nightmare was over, but its shadow would follow us long after we stepped off that cursed bus. We had survived the impossible, but the fear would never truly leave. The bus hissed to a final stop at the deserted station. The night air felt like a purifying wave as we scrambled off, fleeing that metal coffin. I threw the fare in, the driver lost in thought. I didn't go home, the thought of being alone, unbearable. The bright lights of a 7-Eleven beckoned, an island of reality. I needed the noise and light. Stepping inside, the cool air was a welcome shock. The shelves were neatly stocked, a stark contrast to the horror I'd witnessed. This was the real world. This was sane. I grabbed water and a candy bar, performing a routine action. My reflection looked alien, like I'd seen a ghost. I placed my items on the counter, the clerk's cheerful expression faltering. The clerk paused before handing me my change, his friendly demeanor shifting to one of genuine concern. "Are you okay?" he asked. I forced a smile. "Yes, I'm fine. I just ran into a crazy woman on the bus." His expression changed, a flicker of recognition in his eyes. He knew exactly who I was talking about. "Oh, I know who you mean," he said, his tone now somber. "She had cancer. That's why her family had her committed to the psychiatric hospital." The pieces were clicking into place. "It's a terrible story. Just last week she escaped and was hit and killed by a bus." The clerk's words hit me with the force of a physical blow. Hit and killed by a bus last week. Every hair on my arms and the back of my neck stood on end. A wave of icy dread washing over me. It wasn't a crazy woman, it was a ghost. A vengeful, tormented spirit tethered to the site of her traumatic death. She was replaying the moment of her death, and we had unwittingly driven straight into her haunting. I needed confirmation, a final piece of the puzzle that I both craved and dreaded. He told me the route number. It was a number that was burned into my brain. It was the very same bus. The very bus that had hit and killed that woman. The air turned to ice. My feet were rooted to the spot as my gaze locked on the bus parked across the street. It was the same number the clerk had whispered to me. The same bus that had been the instrument of her death. It was her tomb and her weapon. The driver's terror suddenly made sense. He must have been the one driving that night, reliving his own nightmare. By boarding that specific bus, we had stepped into her story, becoming actors in the final tragic moments of her life. Was the metallic smell just old vinyl or the phantom scent of blood? The bus was a cursed object, a rolling memorial to a violent end. It was a vessel of trauma, a ghost ship sailing through the city. My gaze drifted to the front of the bus, scanning the bumper, and then I saw it, a faint dent right below the headlight. This was it, the point of impact. This was where her life had been violently extinguished. The sight of it made the story real. I pictured the scene, the screech of tires, the sickening thud. She wasn't just haunting the road, she was tethered to the bus, her rage giving her terrifying power. Was this cursed vessel somehow calling to passengers? The true horror was the inescapable nature of the haunting. The driver was doomed to relive his mistake, the bus to carry the scar, and the woman's spirit trapped. We had been caught in that loop. The chilling realization was that the story wasn't over. I tore my eyes away from the bus, a profound sense of dread settling deep into my bones. The world felt thin. Ghosts were real. Hauntings were not just stories, and I had been a part of one. How could I ever feel safe again? Every shadow that danced at the edge of my vision was her. I felt her black, soulless eyes watching me from the darkness. The escape from the bus had been a lie. When I reached my grandmother's porch, the relief was overwhelming, but even inside, the fear lingered. It was about the echoes of tragedy, the way violence can stain a place and reverberate through time. The past is never truly dead. I was unable to close my eyes without seeing that horrifying, grinning face. I had looked into the abyss, and the abyss had grinned. I would carry that grin with me, a reminder of the night I rode the ghost bus. The sun rose, but its light did little to dispel the darkness that had settled in my mind. Sleep was an impossibility. Every time I closed my eyes, the scene replayed with vivid, horrifying clarity. The encounter had left a deep psychological wound that I knew would never fully heal. The world felt different now. Its mundane surfaces peeled back to reveal a terrifying layer of existence I never knew was there. The safety of my everyday reality had been shattered into a million pieces. The woman on the bus was a person whose pain and rage had become so powerful that they transcended death itself. I wonder if the other passengers, too, are haunted by what they saw. We were bound together for a brief, terrifying moment in time, a fellowship of fear. The bus is a symbol of how thin the veil between worlds can be. This story serves as a chilling reminder that the world is filled with stories, and not all of them have ended. Some are still being told night after night, in the quiet, forgotten corners of our cities. The echoes of strong emotions, of pain, anger, and terror, can linger long after the people who felt them are gone. They can attach themselves to places and objects, creating ripples in the fabric of reality that can, on occasion, be felt by the living. What I experienced was not just a random haunting. It was a collision with one of these powerful, lingering echoes, a story that is still screaming to be heard from beyond the grave. So the next time you find yourself alone on a deserted street late at night waiting for the last bus home, pause for a moment. Look into the approaching headlights and consider the journey you are about to take. Think about the countless other passengers who have sat in those seats, the dramas, both small and large, that have unfolded within those metal walls. Every vehicle has a history, a past you cannot see. Most of the time, that history is silent. But sometimes it's waiting for a new audience, for someone to bear witness to its unresolved business. Be careful what you dismiss as a trick of the light or a figment of your imagination. The world is far stranger and more mysterious than we are often willing to admit. The woman on the bus was a testament to that fact. She was a ghost born of tragedy, a warning that some horrors do not end with death. They merely change form. Her story is a terrifying lesson in the power of a spirit denied its peace, forever bound to relive its final agonizing moments. It's a story that continues to play out on the late-night routes of my city and perhaps on the lonely roads of yours as well. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the dark. If this true tale sent a shiver down your spine and made you question the shadows in the corner of your eye, then be sure to subscribe to this channel. There are countless other stories lurking in the darkness waiting to be told. Hit that bell icon so you never miss another true horror tale that will remind you to be wary of the world you think you know, and to always check the number on the front of the bus.